Very good evening. You're watching Viewpoint. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. It's been a day where a lot of protests are witnessed in Bangladesh. And the latest that is coming from Bangladesh, the Home Affairs Advisor for the interim government, Brigadier General Shekhawat, has warned that Awami League inciting against disorder will not be tolerated. They are being warned that there are deadlines being set now for return of looted weapons. So some amount of cracking the whip is happening, but is it enough? Are the Hindu minorities being protected? That's the big question. I'm going to address a whole spectrum of questions with experts joining me on the show. Who calls the shots in Bangladesh now? Is it the army? Is it Professor Yunus leading the interim government? Where does the buck stop? Does it stop with the Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, who's just taken over? Who will stand up for the Bangladesh Hindus? There is an outcry now. There's a lot of protest in India as well. There's a lot of anger in India as well for the sort of persecution that minorities are witnessing in Bangladesh. Can India be a mute spectator? Will the horrors of Khalida Zia rule return to Bangladesh? Can Muhammad Yunus control the radical elements in the interim till elections are held? How are the student groups being mobilized? Who exactly is behind them? Are they really student groups or are they front face for a political organization? Let me welcome Dr. Uttara Sahasra Buddhe, political analyst, joining me here on the program today. Very good evening, ma'am. Thank you for joining me on Point. I want to begin by asking you the questions that I actually underlined in the very opening. The point here is that I want to know from experts like you that given the current situation, who do you think needs to really crack the whip, really call the shots? Is it going to be the army? Is it going to be Professor Yunus? Or is it going to be these student groups who seem clearly to have a lot of power to control what is happening in Bangladesh to the minority Hindus?
Yeah, thank you for having me on this show. First of all, it's a very important question, to answer. Who is going to call the shots and who has to actually crack the whip? When Professor Yunus took oath of office a couple of days ago, he in fact made very clear that his government looks forward to bringing the situation under control very quickly, as quickly
Yes.
as possible. Has appealed to various organizations, including the students' organization, to stop violence, and he has in fact very clearly given a kind of an ultimatum in terms of stopping the atrocities against the minorities in Bangladesh. In fact, if I can quote him, what he said, roughly what he said was, if you want to have me as a leader of the government, you have to listen to me. Otherwise, I have the option to resign and go back. So, in a way, Professor Yunus has begun to, let us say, take the situation under control. But in last 2 days, it barely appears that he has been able to take charge of the situation. The situation is indeed grim on ground, very, very difficult for anybody to tackle. Army at this moment doesn't seem to be interested in tackling the situation going beyond a certain limit, because it appears as if it wants to steer clear of certain things, and it doesn't want to enter the administration. It also doesn't want to enter the situation where it is seen as controlling the rights. It is seen as controlling the mob. But if the army is not doing, the question today is who is going to do it, because the police and the government officials in Bangladesh have not yet resumed duty, at least until they haven't yet resumed duty as far as the news in the morning was concerned. And if the police don't come back to their duty, if the government officials do not join the duty, how on earth anybody is going to control the situation remains a question, in fact.
Right. In fact, I want to put that question to Samsuddoza Sajen, who's a journalist and researcher who's also with us now on the program. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Sajen. Thanks for joining us. Would you like to answer what Dr. Uttara just raised about who is going to then control the situation in Bangladesh? Is the army going to be proactive? Because as we understand, the transition period is still on. the government officials, the police have not really are not really seen to have got its act together. All of this that is happening, some of it I understand might be overstated, exaggerated, but it is true that minorities are targeted there. We have verified videos. I'll play out some of them. Who is going to control the mob, those running amok, running riot right now and attacking the Hindu minorities?
Thank you for having me. First of all, I want to inform you that from today, the police have joined and they are now back in their thanas, and more than 90% of the thanas across the country has started working. That means more than 590 thanas, they are now operating. So the first thing first, the police, as always, they will take charge of the everything that happens on the ground across the country. That is the first thing. And to help the police, the army is also there. And the army chief today at the evening, he has already a press briefing, and there he clearly said that the army, they will gradually withdraw, and after assisting the police to take the control of the whole situation, the army, they will gradually withdraw. So the whole affair of maintaining communal harmony in terms of law and order situation or law and order enforcing forces perspective, the police will be on the ground. There is another important thing is that at the community level, you have, as you have seen the events of violences, you have already also seen that people, particularly those protesters and the students, they are also gathering together. They are doing various kind of vigilance initiatives. They are in the night, they are kind of protecting the mandirs and also the Hindu families. And I must also add that the political parties this time, they are behaving in a more matured way, because from the very beginning they have identified that if the situation get out of control, if the minorities, they are targeted across the country, the legitimacy of the whole movement, the achievement of the whole movement, that will be maligned. That will be maligned not only in Bangladesh but globally.
Yes, in fact,
So,
that's precisely I wanted to ask you this question: that who are these student groups? First of all, give us some clarity on it, because are they organic protesters who mobilize themselves against Sheikh Hasina, or do they have the active backing of parties like BNP or Jamaat-e Islami? Are they the front face? Because then the whole narrative changes. How are these student groups, how have they become so influential suddenly that apparently they're even behind the ouster of the chief justice and 5 other judges? There have been a lot of cleansing and all of that happening, and they are initiating this process. How long can that
yeah.
continue, and who are these groups? Give us a clear understanding of that.
Yeah, so basically this is a spontaneous movement, and as it always happen in any form of spontaneous movement, there are always different groups. So in Bangladesh this time, the movement also has seen participation of different groups. It from the Islamist parties, it from the like the parties from the BMP, from the secular activists like the cultural activists. You have must seen that on the 4th August, there was a huge gathering of the cultural activists, and most of them, they were not in any way involved in any kind of activities that can be called communal, because they are from the singers who have been practicing the Rabindra Sangeets, and they are associated with different types of organizations like China. These are the popular institutions in Bangladesh who have been fighting against communal activities since the 1960s, even during the Pakistan period when the Rabindra Sangeet was banned in Bangladesh. So these organizations, they fought against the military and the Pakistani regime. So people from various walks of lives, not only the mainstream students organization there are leftist students organizations, there are students wings from the BMPs, there are student wings from the Jamaat Islami, there are also Qaumi student wings, because there is a large sections of Kobi students in Bangladesh, and they have a kind of active participation in this movement. And there are also students from the private universities, and these private university students, they have a interesting demography because they comes from the more richer echelon of the society, and most of them are from English medium background. With the Dhaka University or the general education or public university area, most students come from the general education or Bangla medium. But in private
Okay.
universities, most of the students come from the English medium background. So they are largely influenced by the Western culture. So they played a very crucial role in this movement, particularly when the public universities, those were closed
And what
by
about
the
their
Sheikh
party
Hasina regime
affiliation?
to
Are they
curb the
affiliated to any
events, to
party?
particularly
Are they
party.
affiliated to any
Yeah.
political party?
As far as yeah, 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 some of them are affiliated with various political parties, but most of them, they were not affiliated with any political party, because the problem is in Bangladesh, in the last 15 years, the political space was shrinked. So there was little opportunity for other political parties, particularly the opposition parties, to function in the universities, because the ruling party and the Awali League regime, they control the universities. But again, in the private universities, those are more apolitical space. The students, they might have different political affiliations, but in the university arena, they could not practice those political activities or the michils or the showdowns. They could not organize those kind of activities. Yeah.
Right. Let me ask Dr. Uttara then. So we got an answer about what is the composition of these student groups. Um, Now the question is, who will India address this with? I mean, there, of course, we have large stakes in it, isn't it? I mean, look at the number of people who are looking to migrate across the border. There's strict vigilance. The BSF has been alerted. It's quite understandable across the globe this happens. With the minority prosecution, the migration follows. And that is where stakes are high for India. There is also the combined question of whether insurgent elements will now find a more fertile ground to sort of operate out of. Given what you just heard from Mr. Sajen, do you think those concerns are adequately addressed, or do you think we have a lot to worry with the change of regime?
Indeed, we have a lot to worry. There are quite a few questions which remain unanswered today. Understandably so, the new government has taken over only just a couple of days ago. They may take control, and they may, actually try and address these issues, and it appears that they will. We have hope to, believe that they will very soon address these issues. But India indeed has a lot at stake after these things. So first, as you very rightly said, there is the possibility of influx of refugees. We will have to address it. And right now, we have sealed all the possible border checkpoints with Bangladesh, and the BSF is patrolling there, trying to prevent people from entering India. It may not be possible to prevent all the people entering India, but in case some refugees come in, and there is some news that some have already entered, and they have been some 600, 500, 600 odd people have been captured by the BSF. Uh, we will have to take adequate steps regarding those refugees. Influx of refugees anywhere in the northeastern states or even in West Bengal state of India is going to create a lot of problems for the government. Given the fact that Assam government in particular, Assam state in particular, are quite against any kind of migration from across the border, wherever that be. The other thing that India will have to address is, once again, as you very rightly said, terrorist insurgent agents within the country. The advantage of the Awami League government in Bangladesh ruling for a long time was the fact that they had helped India control these elements who had otherwise taken refuge in Bangladesh, and they were brought under control to a great extent in last about 9 to 10 years. Once again, the question remains, the border is sealed right now, but just as there is the danger of refugees coming in from Bangladesh into India, there is also a possibility once the border checks are released, insurgent elements from India, taking going back and taking refuge in the neighboring countries. And if they start operating from across the border, that's going to be another headache for a country like India. But perhaps, in my opinion, one of the most important concerns for India at this moment is, and it should be, how to address this question of the borders with Bangladesh. Because our relations with Bangladesh are important specifically for northeastern part of India, northeastern states of India. A whole lot of connectivity projects, whether they're road or multimodal trade routes, etc., they go via Bangladesh. And by closing the borders at Bangladesh, what has happened ultimately is, after the 2021 insurgency and the ongoing civil war in Myanmar, borders with Myanmar are also in trouble. Now, if the border with Bangladesh is also in trouble, then the possibility is that the whole Act East policy, the entire infrastructure, the entire trade routes are going to fall in trouble. And this may once again result in the northeastern states of India becoming landlocked once again. We had been able to free them. We had been able to give them access which is closer via Bangladesh and via Myanmar. And if that is going to fall in trouble today, it's a big danger for India from the point of view of stability and insurgency and peace within the northeastern states, but also from an overall point of view of peace in the region.
Right. In that sense, my another concern that I have in this is that will the jihadist forces gain ground? I want Mr. Samsuddoza Sajen to address that question also, because some of it you heard Dr. Uttara very rightly point out about what the concerns for India will be with the change of regime. So help us understand, or help us at least know how will these challenges be addressed. For example, the fact that you have a so-called extremist party, the Jamaat-e-Islami, who believes in the application of an Islamic rule, probably. And we saw that during the term of Khalida Zia, the ideology was quite different, was in many ways diametrically opposed to what Sheikh Hasina stood for, which is why it worked very well with India to have a sort of a secular party in power. Now, if those changes happen, if there is an overhaul, who will protect the minorities? I'm coming back to that question because while it is all very well to say that you had an organic, like you said, a very spontaneous student movement, and then the leader was ousted, and now you want a democratically set up government. But even now, those same student groups should have stood up for the minority Hindus, isn't it? And you mentioned it correctly that there is a risk of maligning this movement if the minorities are persecuted in this manner. I heard some statements today that a lot of the violence has stopped. Can you tell us exactly what the status is? Where are the pockets? Which are the pockets which are most affected? Which are the people affected? Are they being targeted in the name of being supporters of Awami League, or are they being singled out for being a religious minority? What is the reality on ground?
So there are every type of elements there, because as you have already said, some of the member of the minority community, they were targeted as they were part of the Awami League regime. Either they were part of the government or the ruling party. That is one kind of reality. Another kind of reality, there are always opportunities, and they always take this opportunity to attack their minority neighbors. And in some cases, particularly in Chittagong, we have seen that the people the Muslim neighbor who has some interest in the land or the business of a Hindu neighbor, he attacked the Hindu minority family when the Sheikh Hasina regime fall. But it happens in every type of communal attacks or communal situations, because they look for any type of opportunities. So there are both type of realities, and also there are some rumors, and also there are groups who try to exploit those rumors and frighten the minority communities so that they leave their properties, they leave their houses, and then these opportunists they can capture those properties and those kinds of things. So these kind of elements are there. But what is positive, I have seen in the last few days that people are more aware, particularly the students, those who led the movements in the, you can call it the outside areas of the Dhaka, in the rural areas, in the Mofashal areas. The students, they are taking lead to protect the minorities. So that is the most important thing. And also the Islamic parties, particularly as you have mentioned about Jamaat Islami, this
Yes.
time they are more vocal and they are calling their activists not to involve in any kind of attack on minorities, as they are portraying that if this happens, then Jamaat Islam, they will lose the ground more and it will make their future more uncertain. And I want to add one thing about the Jamaat Islami and its influence in Bangladesh. If you look at the election result since 1971, Jamaat, whenever they participated in any election, they never got more than 5% vote. And that is the reality of Bangladesh. So you must count this reality.
That's
BNP,
very
they came,
reassuring. That's extremely reassuring. You're in a way telling us that the spirit of the country is secular, so it doesn't matter
yeah.
if there are parties with extremist
There are
views.
there are different Islamic elements. Some of them are more radical. Some of them are more extremist. Yes, of course, these elements are in Bangladesh, but they will not get the upper hand that much that they will form the government and they will dictate how the Bangladesh will be run. I can
So
assure
why
you
is
that.
it that the population, the minority population, is depleting in this manner? 1951, you had 20 plus percentage of minority population.
28% in 1941.
28%.
Yeah,
Yes, that's what I
28%.
20 plus.
And it died by in
Now it's around
1971.
8%. Now it's 8% of the population. How
Yeah,
did that decline
yeah,
happen? The sharp decline over the
yeah,
years.
yeah. If you look at the statistics in 1941, when the census occurred or the organized, so the number of the Hindu community was 41%. Sorry, 28% in
Hmm.
1941. In
Okay.
1971, it came down to 28.5%.
Hmm.
That it
So
comes
in
down
20 years,
to,
it
so,
was
sorry,
more or less same. You're saying
sorry,
in 20
it
years,
comes, no,
it
it
came down
comes down
only
to
minor way.
13.5%.
Okay, it comes down
13.5%.
to 30. Okay, okay.
Yeah, 13.5% in 1971. And
Hmm.
from 1971 to 2008, when the last census, particularly about the minority, this was occurred. That time it was found that, as you have said, 8.5%. So
Yes.
in 50 years, since 1971 to 2008, around in the 50 years, it happened not the that much way that happened in the Pakistan period. So what I
Okay, but
am
that
trying
still
to make the
doesn't,
point
that
that
still does,
that
right.
no, no, yes, of course, that is a concern that the number of the minority communities is depleting. It is of
Hmm.
course a matter of concern. I must acknowledge it. But
I
what I
asked
am
you this
trying to say
question
that,
because you said the basic nature of the country is secular. It never gave more than
yeah,
5% vote to Jamaat-e-Islami. Yet, there
yeah,
must
yeah,
be a
yeah,
real concern of minority persecution for the numbers to deplete to this extent. The
yeah.
magnitude of it might have reduced, but it's happening. Yes, Dr. Uttara, go ahead.
Yeah, see, I think there is one explanation for the fast depleting percentage after, particularly 1971. There was a huge out migration from Bangladesh during the and after the war of 1971, and
Yeah.
yet, the decline in percentage of the minority population, especially the Hindu population, is significantly higher. I mean, I don't want to compare it with Pakistan, certainly, but if you compare it with neighbors like us, that is neighbor like India, it's not depleting. I mean, in Bangladesh, it is going down in a very significant way. So I think there are a few reasons for this deplete in the ratio of minorities towards the population. Continued migration outside Bangladesh, so out migration is one of the reasons for it. and that outmigration happens because of perceived atrocities or real atrocities within Bangladesh. I also want to, make my point related to the electoral support given to organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami. Mr. Sajan is extremely right when he says that the electoral support has never gone beyond 5%, and therefore on their own they have not been able to form a government. However, electoral support is a completely different thing, and in general, support within the population for certain ideas and let's say certain movements is very different thing. So for some agenda of Jamaat-e Islami, it is quite possible that there is popular support beyond that electoral support, and that it must be so is quite evident from what has been happening over last 40 odd years within Bangladesh. The point that you were trying to make, madam, is quite understandable, that there is a threat to the minorities within Bangladesh, and that threat somehow is reflected in the declining percentage of population of all minorities.
And that threat is now aggravated clearly with someone, like Sheikh Hasina, who was believed to be at least of a secular mindset, and it was easier to handle, whether it is the growing of insurgency in the northeast, which was under control, whether it was the influx of migrants, or for that matter, persecution of Hindus. It seemed that these issues were tackled effectively between the two countries, and there was enough support and collaboration and cohesion in these matters. Will that continue? That question remains. But I want to come to another point with you, Mr. Sajen, that how are the student groups responding to the killing of Hindus as a fallout of Hasina's ouster? Because somewhere then they can be held responsible also that, look, you wanted Hasina to be out of the country, you got that done, but that has left a trail of destruction, and bulk of it is persecution of the Hindus. Since you mentioned that these are a motley group of student organizations, they're not all affiliated to one party, they are under Western influence, they should be extremely on guard that as a fallout of their movement, the Hindus, the minorities, should not be killed, should not be targeted. The temples are being torn down, their idols are being broken. It is very clear that the religious minority is being singled out. And these same student groups who you are saying are, are modern, are a mix of modern thinking, intellectual thinking student groups, are they not up in arms, or are they not trying to control those radical elements as well, that this should not happen?
Yeah, I must say that they are trying their best, but they are not attaining 100% success. They should try more. So I must acknowledge that. But it is there that the students, they are leading these efforts to protect the minorities. You must acknowledge it. And also, if you look at the events after August 5, whenever they are participating in events, particularly you must know that in Shahbag, the minority communities, people from the minority communities, they are holding protest against the atrocities happened across the country. And there, the students, they are also, through their social media channels and different platforms, they are calling the people that no way these protests should not be attacked, or there should not be any such attempt to throttle this kind of protest movements that is happening in Shahbag. And also, if you look at the students, they are drawing different kind of graffitis all over the country, particularly in the city walls. They are also trying to give the message that in Bangladesh, our identity is not based on our religion, but as a member of the country, be it Hindus, be it Muslim, and they are also bringing up the slogans, those were used during the Liberation War. And one such famous slogan is, "We are all Bangladeshis, we Hindus, we Muslims, we Buddhists, we Christians, we are all Bengalis." So these kinds of slogans they are giving, they are drawing those graffitis in the walls of cities. But I still feel that they must do more. And also the government, particularly, as you know, that Dr. Yunus, he is a world-renowned person, and both India and the world knows that he doesn't have any such affiliation with any capitalist elements, and he has already lived a long life. He is now 84 years old, and you can't single out a event where you can
Which is why
affiliate
I
him
asked
with
in the
any
beginning,
kind
is
of,
he calling
yeah,
the shots?
yeah,
Is he calling the
yeah,
shots? That is
of
what
course,
that was my
of
opening
course,
question. Does the buck stop
he
with
is
him,
trying his
or there
best.
are other
Yeah,
groups who are more powerful now already on the ground?
no, 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 no,
It,
because I
if I
must say
may,
that, because from August 5 to August 8 there were no police on the ground, so that was a
Okay.
really problematic situation. Yeah,
This is
and why
important.
that
I'm
happened?
taking your word for
Yeah,
it. You are
yeah,
saying that
yeah,
the government is only now getting its act together. The government is in place. The police officials are back on duty, and now they
yeah,
are in control of the situation. During the interim, some
yeah,
untoward incidents happened, and therefore, from now on, Professor Yunus is responsible now that his government is firmly back in
yeah.
its seat. Dr. Uttara, you were saying
Yeah,
something.
and also we must, yeah, of course, and also we must understand the situation why the police they left the thanas, or why they were forced to leave the thanas in that way. So you must understand that why there was a such public grudge against the police, that they could not settle, they could not live in their thanas, in the places they were entrusted to, and why even the lower echelon of the police, they are now accusing the government, particularly the Awamu League regime, that the way they use or the politicize the police, that it could not do their regular duty. They were held
But
as
you
a
know, the problem is this is going
as
to
a
take a
same force
long
as the,
time. If
yeah,
the pro Hasina elements will all have to be replaced, and only then will the government actually start functioning. In the interim, the Hindus will continue to be attacked. That is not fair. That
but
would not be
did the
yeah,
same
it,
thing happen in, but did the
actually,
same thing happen in India, when after a long era of Congress, when BJP came, did the people they attack the police?
Hmm, hmm, hmm. No, no, I don't think you
My
can draw
question
direct
is, yeah,
parallel here,
no, no, no,
because here you
no.
okay. Go ahead, Dr. Uttara. You should take
Yeah,
that.
see,
Yeah.
the people in India did not attack the police after the BJP came to power, first of all, and it doesn't happen because it was a democratic change that took place. So one government is elected into power, the other one is voted out of power. The point that I was trying to make is, for the first 4 or 5 days, the police were not on ground, and there was no interim government in place, and therefore, it can be understandable that the students who started the agitation now were responsible for controlling it and so on. Now on, the responsibility lies entirely with the interim government that is led by Professor Yunus. It is his responsibility, and it is his government's responsibility. Whether he does it with the help of the army or brings the police back is a different question. Now, the question is, the police aren't back, and they have left the thanas, and they are not coming back on the duty, is what we have been hearing for a few days now. We also understand the reasons for the same, but the police and other administrative elements in the government are actually meant in such a way, they're structured in such a way that whichever government is in the power, they're supposed to be working along with them. And they're supposed to be apolitical as far as possible. Now, it may be possible that during the Awami League rule, this entire structure was politicized. But even with this possibility of a politicization, the interim government will have to get them back on duty, and
Exactly. And not
assure.
wait for a complete overhaul, etc.
You
Because I
just
don't think that will be possible in a hurry. That's
yes,
going to
and
be
you
a
have to
very
assure
long term
the
process. And in the
administrator.
meantime, you cannot have the
Exactly.
butchering of Hindus and minorities.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that's a very clearly laid out problem then, and I think we have comprehensively spoken about the minority issue. But now let me come to a slightly more broad-based topic, and I would like Dr. Uttara again to address it. Is Mohammed Yunus subservient to the army? I would like both panelists to answer this question. What would be the role of the army then? Today we heard an army brigadier warning certain elements not to attack the minority groups, to return the arms that have been looted, etc. So the army clearly is very much in control of things. So in that whole division of power, what will be the proportionality like? Dr. Uttara.
I think, army is calling shots from behind. They don't want to appear directly on the scene. They don't want to appear this as a kind of a government run by the army. However, they are much in control. And if you see the composition of the Yunus cabinet or the government that has been formed, there are a few people from the army, some retired people from the army are also inducted in the government. They must be having links with the people in the army today. So army is very much in the control of affairs, and it may well be the situation. See, it's very early for anybody to judge it right now at this stage, but it may well be a situation where the army wants to call shots from behind. However, they want to use a very acceptable face of a person like Professor Yunus, which is acceptable not only within the country but across the world, and even acceptable to the neighbors like India. They want to have such a person in place as a leader of the government, and then trying to do some kind of backseat driving. But as you know, let me add once again that it is too early to say anything about it. Let
Okay.
us. It'll be
Wait
better
and watch a bit.
about it at least 2 weeks later, not just
Yeah,
now.
proof of the pudding would be in the eating. So we will see and we will know. Mr. Sajen, please respond to that question. Is Professor Muhammad Yunus subservient to the army? Is army that has the upper hand in all of this?
Yeah, if you look at the from the very beginning after Sheikh Hasina's regime fall, the army, they take over the power. So they called the different opposition groups, particularly the opposition political parties led by BMPs and their associates, and there they discussed and they decided about the what kind of initiatives the army can do, they can take, and also what are the opinions of the opposition parties. And there were only a representative from the students, and he was a teacher basically. And the next day the army, they sit with the students, and then already there was decided that Dr. Yunus, he will lead the interim government. So from that point of time to till today, the army, they have a kind of control over the whole affair, be it in the formation of the government, like what role the interim government will play. And also there is a thing that the students, they are trying to gain ground, they are trying to
But
getting
then
their
the
voices
military in power again changes a lot of dynamics, Mr. Sajan. You do realize, right? I mean, that becomes then a mirror image of what is happening, what was in Pakistan. This entire idea of having a dual power center does not really work well for a country. There is constant instability. And do you see that Bangladesh
yeah,
will
yeah,
be
yeah.
different from what was happening in Pakistan? There, the dual power system, where it has landed Mr. Imran Khan. So there is a constant
Yeah,
tussle
yeah.
which has
So
never worked well for the country. Will Bangladesh be any different?
yeah, of course the situation is totally different in Bangladesh and will be different. That I was going to add. Now the
Okay.
students, those who have still a huge hold over the people who participated in the ousting of the Sheikh Hasina's regime in the protest, so they are now on the ground, and they are now also starting to calling the shots. Because if you look at the way the justices of the Supreme Court and the different officials from different important institutions, even within the army, because today several important top positions army officers are replaced by new ones, and those places, particularly those positions, were suggested by the students. Also today the four important posts in the Bangladesh bag, four important people, they were replaced by other peoples, and those shots were called by the students. So the students, they are now trying to getting the things on their behalf, and there is pressure from the students on Dr. Yunus's cabinet that they must adhere to the spirit of the movement. So there is a kind of, you may say that there is a kind of tension between the army. They want a different kind of things from the students, but there is another group, that is the political parties. And there is a kind of reality in Bangladesh that the political parties, the students, they hold the authority in that way that the army in the long run that will not be possible for them to
So this will
maintain
work
a
both
rule
ways.
like
You know,
that,
so
that happened in
you are
Pakistan.
explaining
And
to
if you
us.
also just I want to add an example here. If you
Sure.
look at the situation in the from 2006 to 2008, that time
Hmm.
there was a plan that there will be a civil government that will be backed by the military, but
Hmm.
they could not run it for a long time because the political situation that didn't allow them to do so. So this time
This
that
sounds
is
like a
not
great
much that
balance of
different.
power.
Yeah.
But again, I will go with
Yeah.
Dr. Uttara, who said that we'll have to see how it plays out, because you are explaining to us that there is this entire, counterweight that is happening. There's a civil rights group, there is the army, there's a students group, there is Professor Yunus, who's a very respectable figure, globally respected. There is an interim government which he is heading. So all of this will act as a counterbalance to each other, and it'll be a very smooth process. Sounds great on paper, but what happens when push comes to shove? Who calls the shot? Whether all of these power groups start clashing with each other or not remains to be seen. I want to go into another question with you, Mr. Sajan. That Sheikh Hasina's statement today says that she never addressed the students as Rajakar. So those things were incited by vested groups, by political parties who were her political rivals. Then she says Professor Muhammad Yunus is a US agent. So her removal was orchestrated by the United States. This is one of our first reactions, in fact. How are you responding to this? As a journalist, what is your response to this statement coming from Sheikh Hasina?
So it is the history that every time a dictator he or she was replaced, he or she said that it was a done by a foreign agent, and it happens in everywhere. If you look at the Libya or in Iraq, even in the history of the Bangladesh, there are several kind of coup and several kind of mass uprising against Ayub Khan. There was mass uprising against Jail Irshad. So every time they say that this was done by a foreign agent. Sometimes they call it when it was against them. They call it the okay. It is the USA or it was the India or it was ISI. So this is common, and this happens in everywhere in the world. So that is the first reality. And about the students, Sheikh Hasina, what's the way Sheikh Hasina did the press conference, students feel that they were not treated properly, and with that added the his kind of his general secretary Ubaidul Kader, the leader of the student wing of Awami League, Chhatra League, they said that they will they will control the situation, and these students who are protesting, they are the Rajakars, because this is not the first time this movement occurred. It started since 2008. Even in 2015 and 2018, this quota movement it appeared, and also that time the Awami League regime they said that these people who are asking for the quotas or particularly reducing the percentage of quota of the liberation war fighters, they are against the liberation war. So this kind of connotation already there. This discourse was already there, and in this discourse that happened that when the prime minister said the way that okay, whom I will give the job, the Rajakars, the son of the Rajakars or the son of the liberation fighters. So it kind of created a binary that either you
Yes.
are, yeah, either you are a liberation
With
war
us
fighter
or
or
you are a
supporter, or
Rajakar.
either you are a Rajakar. Yeah. So
Hmm.
that was the starting of the problem. And also I must add that okay, these huge upsurge of people, it was not just about a quota. It was
Okay.
the grievances of the people, because you already know that the last three elections, people in Bangladesh they could not cast their vote. So this is a very very serious issue. If you look at the
So you
economy of
are ruling
Bangladesh,
out external hand in this. You said that a 15 years of pent up emotion is what has manifested as this huge uprising. It has nothing to do with US controlling any of this or deciding to remove
no,
Sheikh Hasina.
I just I
Yes,
am not
complete.
ruling. No, I am not ruling out the interference of any other power, because in every kind of political turmoil, there are always groups they try to take the
Yes.
opportunity. So there might
They
be
may
some
have tried to
elements
seize
there.
the opportunity, but this was
Yeah,
something
seize the
you are
opportunity.
expected
But
to form a
I don't
people's
want to look at the
and
whole movement of the mass uprising through a conspiracy lane.
got it. I got
Yeah.
that. Yes. Now I'm coming to the concluding part of this broadcast, and I want to address the issue from India's perspective with Dr. Uttara. That Professor Yunus again has said in so many words. He expressed his reservation over Modi's proximity to Sheikh Hasina and made it amply clear that for relations to resume and for everything to be amicable between the two countries, India cannot be seen as a protector of Sheikh Hasina, who has now become clearly the enemy of the nation. Everybody across society is speaking up against her. Right from Professor Yunus to the army chief to the student groups to women's rights activists, etc. It seems everybody wanted her out. Now, if India is seen on her side, then Professor Yunus says we will have our compulsions in terms of how to engage with India if it is seen, if Mr. Modi is seen to be in close proximity with Sheikh Hasina. How do you think India should address this?
It's a very a significant dilemma for India right now because Sheikh Hasina has taken. She is right now. She has not asked for the asylum, but she is residing in India and she is being protected by the government of India. To protect is important from the Indian point of view. To allow her to stay here as long as she wants is also important from the Indian point of view, because the government of India and Awami League government, Hasina's government in Bangladesh have had long relations. And these relations actually cut across the party lines because Hasina has been in power for nearly 15 years. And, in her first 4 or 5 years of term, it was not the Modi government which was in power in India.
Yes.
The relations actually between the two countries, they actually cut across the party lines. But at the same time, Mohammed Yunus's stand that India should not be seen as the protector of Sheikh Hasina. Indian government will have to pay some attention to that. And they will have to wriggle out of this dilemma because improving relations with Bangladesh at the moment is extremely important from the point of view of three things. One, the inflow of the migrants, possible inflow of the refugees. Secondly, the trade routes that appear to have been closed at the moment, at least. And thirdly, the questions of insurgents in the northeastern states of India, particularly bordering Bangladesh, particularly states like Assam, in that context. For all these things, Indian government will have to mend fences with whoever is the power in Bangladesh.
Right.
I can draw from example in the past that with Myanmar we have done it and we have done it successfully twice. In the 90s, when Suu Kyi was elected but not allowed to form the government, we had supported Suu Kyi. But later on, as the junta, took reins in Myanmar, Indian government was able to improve relations with the junta. When the democratic government came to power, India was able to improve its relations with democracy. And after 2021 coup, once again, India has been able to do reasonably well with the new junta that has taken power in Myanmar. So, with some kind of deft diplomacy, without, let us say, harming the interests of Sheikh Hasina, uh, at the same time, handling the new government in Bangladesh in a deft manner. Perhaps they will have to repeat the diplomatic performance that they did in the last few months after the election of Moisu in Maldives. And now see, you can see the reversal that they have been able to bring about. I think they will have to work. The New Delhi will have to be extremely patient. They will have to
It
keep
is a
their,
precarious situation. It is a delicate
and
situation for
it
now.
may take months to mend the relationship, but they will have to give it that much of time. And
Yes, both countries perhaps will have to, come
yes.
to a common ground on this because there is a lot at stake. There's a large
And
common
at the same time,
ground
I
which
would also
is
like to
clashed about.
add that it will not be advisable for New Delhi to desert Sheikh Hasina at a stage where she is today. She has been a friendly leader, and respecting her and whether to allow her asylum is a different thing. But asking her to leave the country at this moment is not. It will be unbecoming
Well,
of.
there were some reports today that she's already on the way out to London. We'll have to confirm those reports, but yeah, that sort of information is already coming in. Last word to you, since you're joining us from Bangladesh, giving us the ground realities. I want to know from you, Samsuddoza Sajen, that how should India be tackling this, given the delicate situation, as Dr. Uttara explained? Because you see, I was talking to another analyst earlier today, and he said that Bangladesh has more to lose because the trade routes are such that the dependence of Bangladesh on India is a lot more. So you cannot afford to have a situation where there is hostility between the two. Because should that happen, India has the upper hand with lot of the bilateral trade deals that is on between the two countries. Have I lost Mr. Sajan? Yes, Mr. Sajan, do you think that it will only help Bangladesh if it takes proactive measures rather than sending out these veiled threats about don't protect Sheikh Hasina or we will not be cordial with you? It is only in the interest of Bangladesh, isn't it, more than India, to sort of get its act together and put relations back in shape?
Yeah, of course. And if you look at the speech of the advisor, foreign ministry advisor Tawhid Hassan, today
Yes.
and yesterday, he emphasized that Bangladesh always want India as a friend, and India always see Bangladesh not through any particular government or any political party's lens, but through the lens of a people-to-people friendship. They must earn the trust from the Bangladeshi people, and that is the way of building a sustainable relation. The government under the Dr. Yunus, they are very eager to build a sustainable relationship with India. Even the BMP, who did blunder last time when they were in power in dealing with the India's concern, they are now also realizing that they must have a very close relationship, a very working relationship with India, because India is the reality. You can't ignore this reality. So Bangladesh today, if you call it the border problem, if you call it the trade, transit, maritime, in everywhere, Bangladesh have to work with India, and in a way that both the countries, they gain mutual interest. They can address the mutual threats. They think that, okay, if for India the northeast is the most important case, and what they want from Bangladesh must address those issues. And I think in the interim government and also the other powers, they are coming in the future. They are now recognizing this reality. And I also want to request the Indian authority that they should also understand the concern of the Bangladeshi people, and they should prioritize the Bangladeshi
For
people,
that, the
not
killing of
any
Hindu
single political
minorities
party.
must stop, Mr. Sajan. For that, Hindu
Yeah,
minorities must be protected because that has become the
yeah, of course,
immediate concern
of
now.
course,
Nothing
yeah,
can
of
be seen
course,
beyond that unless you have the
yeah,
Hindu brothers protected. Because remember, there's a Muslim minority here in India. A backlash
yeah,
is but natural. It has happened in the past.
yeah,
And
yeah, of
already, if
course.
you create that sort of a volatile situation, it will be very damaging for both
Yes, I
countries.
think both India
Communal
and
factors
Bangladesh
are
both
very
work on this
easily in
issue.
play. Yes, and you
Yeah,
have a
both
West
India and
Bengal, a state
Bangladesh work
like
on this, because when anything happen in India against the Muslims, it also has repercussions in Bangladesh. Samely
precisely,
in
and that is
Bangladesh,
never a
yeah,
desirable situation. You have a state
yeah,
like
yeah,
West Bengal, which is communally very sensitive. You cannot
yeah,
have that sort of a volatility going on all the time. So situation must be
yeah,
firmly handled. And I appreciate your words and your reassuring words about how now that the government is taking shape, things are going to change. The police is on its job. The killings have to stop. They are, I'm hoping, already reduced over the past couple of days as the government is taking control. Professor Yunus's government is taking control. We do hope that the army will crack the whip, the police will crack the whip, and ensure that those bigots, those radical elements, the jihadist forces, the fundamental elements do not rule the roost. And it is in Bangladesh's interest first. more than India's
Of
interest,
course.
that is not allowed to happen. Samsuddoza Sajen and Dr. Uttara Sahasra Buddhe, thank you so much for joining me on Viewpoint this evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. And I must conclude with this, that here is a situation that India also will have to tackle very, very carefully. It's a delicate situation. We have tried to explain how the entire problem is laid out now for India. We had the experts tell us all of that. We were live on YouTube and Twitter. Feel free to put in your comments. Tell us what you found most convincing among the arguments that were presented on the show today. Thanks for watching. Good night.